Hey, everybody. Let's talk about Okinawa, Japan. So, the food in the video above is not technically Okinawan because I don't have access right now to a grocery store or a restaurant that doesn't just serve kind of ambiguous, generic, like Americanized Japanese food, right? And the culture in Okinawa is actually very different than that of mainland Japan. And I think, look at this graph. 67% of what they eat is sweet potatoes. And I looked up a bunch of different recipes to see if I could recreate some sort of like Okinawan sweet potato. And it wasn't super successful or promising for me. So what I did was I took components of things that are eaten in this area, and I did a bunch of research online about the culture and about the foods, and little tofu cubes. So soy is obviously a staple in Japan. But these nice little tofu cubes that they serve in Okinawa, and then there are a variety of different types of broth, noodles, and vegetable mixtures. I mean, across the globe, really, but definitely across Japan. That's the noodles, broth, and vegetable combo. These little tofu things. That was something that I found that popped up pretty regularly when I was researching. And the reason I share that story is because when we get so set on this is what this diet has to look like, or, oh, they didn't eat that in Okinawa, I can't eat that because I'm on the blue zone stuff. Relax. I took foods that are generically, roughly from the area that I had access to and had a really delicious and nutritious meal. And it was great while I watched the documentary again about Okinawa, Japan. And what I think is interesting is that if you look at this breakdown about other grains, meat, fish, poultry, 1% other foods, legumes, vegetables, rice, but like sweet potatoes, they just swooped in here and like it just took over. And what I think is really cool about this is that a lot of times the foods that we see as health foods here in the States are just regular foods other places in the world. Because you know how many times I've been in a restaurant and I've ordered sweet potato fries or a baked sweet potato instead of a regular potato, and people always look at me and ask, are you dieting? One, I don't diet, so no. And two, why is sweet potato a diet food? And it's because it's been marketed to us as a healthy alternative to a regular potato. Regular potatoes aren't that bad. That's just how they've been marketed to us. It depends on how you prepare them, what nutrients you either add or take away or just kind of leave there. But the way foods are presented to us has to do with how we see them in our minds. And if sweet potatoes are presented to you as a health food, and for whatever reason you have, aside from just not liking sweet potatoes, to be anti-sweet potato in whatever situation, that speaks to your experience with food, your experience with the perception of food, and can tell you a lot about whether or not you have a beneficial relationship with food or not. And I like sweet potatoes, so that wasn't super weird to me, but I hear it from other people all the time. And the other thing that we get stuck on is being really rigid and really unwavering in when we commit to something or when we do something for our health. We think that there needs to be a pamphlet or a booklet or a check sheet or something that tells us exactly what to do, how to do it, and when to do it. Because we're not taught about nutrition and our mind-body health connection. And it really is a disservice to us because I'd say about half of the people that have made comments to me about sweet potatoes being a diet food, because this is just an example of a concept that takes place. About half of those people don't actually dislike sweet potatoes. They were just anti-sweet potato because at the time they were anti-diet. Or other people who opted for sweet potatoes but don't actually like them because they were supposed to. And I'm not saying that either of the, like, denying or asking for a sweet potato is inherently good or bad. I'm using that as an example because when we conceptualize food as good and bad, and then we decide to either eat or not eat something, we start to internalize that moral judgment that we have just made on a tuber. And I think that's a lot of what the Blue Zone's approach, because I don't like calling it the Blue Zone's diet, because it's not. It's really not. This Blue Zone's approach is more about, hey, these are the guidelines. This is like the rough structure for this. What works for you? You don't like sweet potatoes? Okay. How about regular potatoes? What about legumes? Not a legume fan? All right, maybe let's substitute some beans. You know, oh, you don't like Brussels sprouts? Let's see, maybe some kale and spinach and green beans. Like those are, you can make substitutions. Substitutions aren't inherently bad. And I think that's a big lesson that I took from trying to find food from Okinawa in the Midwest. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm just saying it's not prominent. But then doing research, learning more about a culture that I find fascinating every time I read about it. Fascinating. That sounds kind of condescending. Beautiful. That's what I'm going to use. A beautiful culture that I love to learn about every time something new pops up. Something that I learned trying to find food from this wonderful culture that is so just, rich. It's so rich with so much history and heritage and meaning and culture and ideas and philosophy and things like that. I mean, I think that about a lot of cultures. But for this, trying to find food, even at a grocery store, like I was fully prepared to make some of my own. But that was difficult. And what that shows me is that there are people, places, and things around the world that are very different from the experiences and access and other people, places, and things that we interact with regularly. But that doesn't mean that we can't learn from them. So stepping outside of your box is another key piece to understanding what you can and can't do within the Blue Zone's mindset. Extract the concepts and then apply them, how they apply, where they apply, when they apply in your life. Extract the food suggestions and ideas and guidelines and then apply them based on what you need. Because when you start to feel empowered to go, okay, well, this restaurant doesn't serve what I was looking for, but what's something else on the menu that's similar, that contains the same ingredients or contains similar ingredients? Okay, can't find something exact, but what about ingredients that have a similar taste, a similar texture, similar nutritional benefits, depending on how deep you want to go with it? So we take the concepts, we take what we learn from other people that are different from us, and we realize, oh, this could help me in this way. And having that feeling of empowerment to take charge of your health, your well-being, the foods you eat, how you perceive them, when, how, and where you share them with people, maybe even learning to cook new things. It really depends on what you need and what you want. But whenever you do get to experience that sense of empowerment, it's almost like it elevates you to the next level of going, oh, I can do this. I do have the knowledge to do this. I do have the willpower to do this. I do have access to do X, Y, and Z, even if I can't do A, B, and C. Let's try it. And then you just keep adjusting on the way. Because feeling empowered to take charge of, it just sounds so aggressive. When you take charge of your own health and well-being, all of the restrictive dieting and push for a certain aesthetic and push for this and push for that kind of fades away. And the more you learn, the more you grow, the more you dive into whatever you're diving into, the more you start to realize that I'm doing this and that feels good. I'm doing this for me. And I think that's where the mental health component largely comes in with, at least what we've talked about in this video, with the nutritional component, is that it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be identical to what you see online. It doesn't have to be just like what someone else is doing. Find ways to make it fit for you. And don't do this whole all or nothing thing, because all that's doing is setting you up to feel like nothing when you should feel empowered. And I think that I think the Blue Zones helps us achieve that. So that's my little rant on Oki and foods and how we can approach different mindsets and different premises surrounding food in areas that are not necessarily conducive to it 100% of the time. Do a little bit here and there. Makes a world of